a playlist original.
Now, America's most exciting and legendary movie hero comes to the big screen like you've never seen him before and faces his greatest danger, the Phantasm.
I want you.
Can't be too careful with all those weirdos around.
In a soaring new full-length motion picture adventure, Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, rated PG, starts December 25th, only in theaters.
All right, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives, where we talk about the movies you love or some of the movies you might have forgotten about. On today's episode, we have our first repeat guest other than Jackson. Jackson is on the main show, so not to say that Jackson doesn't count, but Jackson is a part of the family already. He's a part of the team. So when he wants to hop over to the spinoff, he can hop over to it, even though he always asks for permission still. Like we're setting one up with another group of people, and he heard what movie it was, and he was like, "Oh, can I be on that one?" I was like, "You don't have to ask. Like it's also
Right.
your show." So other than Jackson, we got Dustin Ripka back after he was on talking Collateral with me on the deep dive, another fantastic movie that he shows, and you guys really liked that episode and liked the conversation. So I was like, "Do you want to do it again?" And he was like, "Yes." And he picked a really fun movie. And also, once he tells you what it is, it'll be of the type of movie it is. It's the first time we've actually covered the style of movie on the show.
Oh wow!
So that's fun
Yeah.
too. So Dustin, welcome. Before we get into the movie, though, let us know if there's anything you got going on with your podcast. Funny story too. One of my girlfriends listened to it, and she was just like, I just loved how it was like you guys were like, yeah, his podcast is this, which is so different from yours. And then you guys kind of just segued right into talking the movie, and somehow it really works, and it wasn't jarring. So she was like, good job.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I mean, and thank you to anybody who would listen or watch on YouTube like that. You know, it means a lot. For people who don't know, I have a sex and relationships and dating podcast called Sex Party. It is every bit as wild as you would think it is, but it's also, we have experts on, we have sex workers on, we have coaches, we have people who have mastered the art of dating and whatever. I mean, anybody you can imagine, celebrities sometimes. And, it's equal parts chaos and equal parts value. So every time you tune in, you should be able to chuckle at my nonsense and then learn something, whether it's a new tactic for dating or in the bedroom or whatever it is. And I think I mean, it's hard out here, like people don't realize like how much crazy stuff we've been told growing up. So this is my show aims to sort of break that down, and you can find it everywhere you find podcasts and on YouTube every single Wednesday. Just celebrated 2 years, so I'm super pumped.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Congratulations! I
Thank
thought
you.
that was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
we did back in November, so we're not too far. You're not too far away from us. So yeah. It's crazy because like it feels like a long time, but like these things are always like constantly evolving. So it feels like you're almost like starting anew a little bit once you get more like like a lot of people who listen know that this show has gone through a lot of different co-hosts. Thankfully, Jackson's been on for over a year and he has stuck, and it's been really good. But there's been a lot of changes with the show, so with each change, it feels like you have to like start over again.
Yeah, totally. And like, originally, like, and I might have said this on our first episode, and if I didn't, great. And if I did, just edit me out. But I'll be repetitive, I guess. But like, your content and then later your podcast, like I'm such a pop culture nerd, but I'm also like such a film, a television narrative like fan. And so even though I have a sex and relationships podcast, you can see, the pop culture references. I mean, I name the titles of episodes. If you're into Easter eggs, just go look at my title list and you'll be like, oh, that's that's Ghostbuster or that's Die Hard or that's so like I do that on purpose because I don't know how else to do it. Originally, I was gonna do a film, an entertainment television podcast, but like, I am such a fan of what you do and what your team does, right? That I'm like, how am I'd rather just be a fan of you guys and like new rock stars and all these other things because it's like I'm not gonna be as good as so I'm like that we went the sexual way instead. So
Yeah, it works. It works. I mean, I couldn't. Not that I'm not an open book with my friends and discussions with them, but I don't think I could do what you do. And I think everyone has their niche, right, and everything that they're able to discuss freely. And
yeah.
you do what you do well, and I appreciate you saying that we do what we do well over here. So I will greatly appreciate it. So I wanted to give you a chance now that we got our reintroductions in. Let everyone know what movie you chose. And I was actually really like you talked about like at one point if you should change it, and I was like, no, no. I think this one will be good because I would have never thought to do it. And even though I love it, I would have never been like, oh, let's do that one. And I thought it was a great choice, and I think everyone's going to enjoy it. So yeah, let them know what you picked.
So I think if you listen to our last episode on Collateral, we talked about a Michael Mann shared universe. We talked about all of the stuff with Heat 2 and all of those things, and we really did do a deep dive. And I think you and I are both like diehard fans of Vanilla Sky, and I thought, people probably thought like, hey, they're gonna do Vanilla Sky, right? But I hate I really hate being predictable. I love having a sharp left turn. Oh my god, that he's the bad guy. Like I love that. Like so, I was like, how do I sharp left turn this? So the movie I chose is Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, and I think we're gonna have fun with it.
I think so too. Not that Vanilla Sky would have been bad. I think there was a lot of a lot of hits with that Collateral episode because we kept bringing it up, and I was like, oh, we should probably do that one. Then you were like, the next time I come on, we probably shouldn't do 2 Tom Cruise movies in a row,
right?
And I was like, yeah, that's probably true, but keep it in your back pocket though.
No, yeah, I think when we should find a special way to drop the Vanilla Sky episode when we do it, like something weird, like we'll do some promo or something crazy.
Yeah, we'll make it work. And then the reason I was so excited for it because, like I said, why I meant why we haven't done a film like this. We have never covered an animated movie in detail on either show, whether for an anniversary or on the deep dive. So this was exciting because it was the first for me to do it this way. I also probably like you grew up watching Batman the animated series, so I was really excited to discuss it on that level. And then also it'll probably give us a chance to talk about Kevin Conroy too, who does the voice of Bruce Wayne Batman. And he sadly passed away, but I think for a lot of people he remains the signature. I mean, I guess there's so many live action versions of Batman, right? So it's hard when you're trying to rank them all where you put him in. But I think if you were to think of the voice, like who encompasses your Batman, and Kevin Conroy is that for a lot of people. Even if they don't know the guy's name, they might be like, who's the guy who did the voice on the animated series or in that animated movie? So it's a good opportunity to talk about that. And then also getting into how the release of this was handled too. I knew that it had a theatrical release. I didn't know how short and why it was so short and why they pivoted from us, straight to home video release to a theatrical release, which seemed like it's because they had like faith in it, but then it became on the end of Warner Brothers like rushing it to get it out in time on Christmas Day. They really didn't have the time necessary to promote it the way that they wanted it to, and it didn't have a long life in theaters, despite how when I was a kid, it felt like it was really popular. But I think by the time that I realized its popularity, it had already become popular via home video and all that. So they did say that it eventually made its money back in the home video market, and they actually recently released a 4K edition of it too, which that's how I watched it for this. Looks and sounds great. But yeah, it was a fun rewatch. I hadn't watched this in a really long time, like years upon years since the last time I watched it fully. And I think it might be like one of my up there in the tops of one of my favorite like just Batman projects ever, whether it be animated or live action.
Yeah, I mean, this if you're a Batman fan, listen, well, here we go already with the fucking controversy. But if you're a Batman fan and you don't have this one in your top 5, you need to potentially like reevaluate your top 5. And the thing is, you know, I had seen it as a kid. I was a lucky person who got to see it as a child because, you know, Batman '89 with Keaton, like for me, I was like 8 years old, right? And in '89, it had all been it had all been basically like Ninja Turtles and like Ghostbusters, right? I didn't know who Batman was. I wasn't a comic book kid yet. And my parents came back and they had seen, like, you know, as adults, like them and another couple went and saw it on Friday when it first came out. And they were just so blown away. Obviously, Jack Nicholson, all these things. And they were debating, is it too dark? So they took my sister and I'm 8, she's fucking 6, right? And so when I came out of that theater, I was a changed person. And like Batman is my number 1 all-time favorite. And you know, it changed the way I looked at everything, including like marketing. You can even look at Sex Party and see some of the like the symbol, right? Whatever. So when Mask of the Phantasm, I want to say '89, and then Batman Returns, I think it was '92, and it didn't do very well. This was '93, and I think the animated series had been going for a season or 2, right? And it was such a hit. And so when this came out in theaters, it was like, oh my God, you know, and it was mysterious. Mask of the Phantasm, what the hell, you know? And so when it came out, I saw it in theaters as a kid, and then I kind of like knew about it. I think I maybe watched it once again in my early 20s, but in 22, just at the tail end of like the masking and stuff for the pandemic, there's this classic little theater. It was built in 1910 called the Music Box here in Chicago, and they do these really cool, as you would imagine, like anything. I mean, Hitchcock and whatever. They had a midnight screening. It was only a midnight screening of a 35 millimeter cut of Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, and the previews were all like old ads from the 90s, like before, like instead of showing movie previews, they showed like, you know, 35 minutes of like old toys and animated series ads and whatever. And so it was a really cool experience. But one of the reasons I chose this, right, is because when I saw that as a full-fledged adult, I was blown away at how dark and adult this film was. And it felt like the people from the television show, from the animated series show, got to do everything they wanted that was darker and more adult in this because it was for a wider audience. I mean, the Joker's running around with missing a tooth for half, you know, the last half of the movie. There's actual blood, like when like the punches actually land. There's some gnarly fucking deaths. Like this is the first film besides this is the first animated depiction of Joker gas actually killing someone, which I thought was really interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you know, like, dude, Batman at its core is about trauma and PTSD, and this fucking thing does not hold back addressing that. You just have to really kind of be an adult to see it, to look for it, to see it, you know?
Yeah, it's true. When you're watching it as a kid, it's just all like a bunch of cool imagery, and it's fun on that level. I mean, I think I've seen it, you know, like I said, it's been years, but I didn't see it again as an adult and remembered how I saw it. That's how long it's been before this. I think right after Batman Begins was the last time I watched it. So that was a long time ago. You know, in case people don't remember, that Batman Begins came out in 2005. So it was a little bit after that I watched this again.
Yeah.
And And watching it as a full-fledged adult, there are a lot of adult themes in it. You're right, people do die.
Yeah.
It's violent, and it's dark. I mean, the animated series was dark too. It actually played, someone made a good comment. I think it was on a special feature I watched for the movie where they said that the animated show wasn't afraid to play sophisticated for adults, but was still able to appeal to kids, and that is kind of where the DNA for this movie lies, and they kind of just ran with that a little bit more. Like if you're a child, there's things that you can love, and then as an adult, there's also themes that you're like, I totally missed that when I was, 8 or old when
Right.
where we saw it for the first time,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
and then you learn to appreciate it at a whole other level. I'm glad you said what you said, that it should be in your top 5
Yeah.
Batman film, whatever you want to. I think some people might dismiss it because it's an animated film.
Yeah.
But it really works just as well as some of the live action stuff we got. And I too was a child of Batman 89 and love that movie. But I remember all this coming out in a really interesting time, because 89 was very successful and changed basically how movies were marketed back then. And then in 92, in the summer of 92, you got Batman Returns, and I like it. I've always liked it, but it definitely it's a Tim Burton movie first and a Batman movie second. And it's really dark and much darker and different than the first movie. And this was a movie that was really marketed towards kids. A lot of Happy Meal tie-ins. So when parents to take their kids to go see it, they walked out very, very angry. And so that movie wasn't as successful as the first Batman. But then the animated series comes out in September of 92 and right away changes the face of like what animated cartoons, especially of this kind of medium of comic book cartoons, could be, and quickly became successful on Fox. And I think with this coming in 93, I think the initial thought, which is probably why they chose to pivot to a theatrical release, was they saw how successful the cartoon was and wanted to monopolize on that. But then I think they also wanted to cut, not the creators, but the studio wanted to cut corners and get it out quickly. And from what I heard, they had an 8-month turnaround to get this all done. And that is, even though that seems like a long time for an animated project with so much going on, it's not a long time at all. So they had to get it all done, finish it, and then promote it, and they didn't have time to do all that the most effectively. So I didn't realize it came out on Christmas Day when it was released, but it came out on Christmas Day, and usually that is a day that movies do a little bit better. They get like a bump because everyone's out of school, out of work, but this just didn't have the marketing behind it that it needed. And when I say quick, it had a $6 million budget. It only made $5.6 million total during its whole run in theaters. So it came and went really fast. In theaters, unfortunately. But home video definitely saved it and gave it a brand new life, which is interesting because that was the original idea anyway, was to release it straight to video. I mean, I love the idea of why they wanted theatrical. I just wish they would have given it the time to breathe, so it could have possibly done better in theaters.
Yeah, it seems like maybe there was some panic from Batman Returns, and they were trying to, like, I don't want to say make up because it's a whole different thing, but I think they were just trying to utilize the IP, and they were just trying to like push the you have a movie that you're gonna put on TV or direct to video or whatever. Like, let's make it a theatrical thing and pump it up on whatever. But like, you're right, they didn't market it effectively whatsoever. But like, think about the original posters, because I can remember seeing the cardboard standee in the, and it's like, Batman like with his wings up, or with his cape up like wings in this crazy like Art Deco noirish thing, and then this foreboding phantasm mask. I mean, you could have done so many cool marketing things with that. Like and the fact that it was a new villain, and that is something that I think still to this day like hasn't been capitalized, and I have a point to make about that later. I'll drop a bomb on
Yeah,
on that
Oh,
one,
okay.
but I think it is, you're right, it is a bit of a testament to how good it is that it did flourish, on home video. I mean, people really picked it up and they would watch it right alongside, the animated series that was headed into syndication or whatever, just pumping out new episodes. I mean, that a lot of people did grow up with that world, and this thing is like, yeah, animated, sure, like we talk about, and like, but there's some classics, like, I mean, I go back to like Cowboy Bebop and shit. Like, that's one of the greatest fucking most emotional stories I've ever seen. The whole thing's anime. The whole thing's animated.
Yeah.
And like, for this, I mean, this movie, it doesn't redo Bruce Wayne's origins, but the backstory, because they jump to the past, jump to the present, and jump to the past, jump to the present.
Yeah.
And you get all these cool, like, it is so well written. It is so well written because it runs alongside of the traditional Batman origin story that we know, and it fills in all these holes that were there, and it even fills in holes for the Joker's origin. It fills in holes for Batman's origin, and then you get to, like, again, the trauma and like the loss of his parents, and it tackles it in such an adult way that it almost does take multiple viewings to pick up on. I mean, that scene where he's at his parents' gravestone and it's raining and he's crying, that's award-winning writing right there, and also award-winning acting. I mean, that's
good.
One of the most powerful scenes. Like, he's fallen in love, he's asking his parents for permission not to become the Batman. You know what I mean? And like, that's so sad, but it also like shows you kind of how trauma and PTSD has affected his brain.
Yeah. I would say across all the films, that moment probably depicts the situation going on with him and the loss of his parents and what that has done to him, and why he has felt he has to take on this mantle. That I think that conveys it the best out of all the films that we got him, that deals in his origins. That scene is very well written, very well done, and like you said, on both ends, Kevin Conroy does a good job of conveying the emotions in that, and it's asking for permission. It almost sounds like begging, like, can I please let this go? I don't want it, so I can live like a normal life, basically. And and then and it's almost done in a way where it's framed in such a way that it's almost like a child talking to their parents as if, I don't want you to be disappointed in me if I choose to do something else. There's a lot of layers in that scene that just really work well. And it, like you said, it's good writing and some good voice acting on his part. And probably my favorite scene in the movie. I mean, there's some other fun stuff in it, but like, totally. as far as grabbing the emotions, that's probably the best moment in the whole movie.
Yeah, and I think it's a classic, again, like top 3, I would say, probably Batman moments in all cinema, and because we, as the audience viewing the story and knowing the tale of Bruce Wayne and the Batman, we know that his parents, that's the last thing they want for him, is to become a bat and go out at night and beat up poor people. Like, they don't want that. They'd want him to build a hospital and outfit the cops with whatever and be happy and have children, right? And there he is on his knees begging for forgiveness, not to be this animal, not to be this creature of the night. And if you just for a second, if you apply that monologue and that scene to any of your on camera real in real life, whether it's Pattinson or Keaton or Affleck, if you take that scene and apply it to them, God, it fucking breaks your heart because it makes you look at all the other Batman movies totally different. Like this man, yes, he's intelligent. Yes, he's you know, can train himself to do whatever and all these other things, but like he is suffering. Like underneath that mask is like nothing but suffering. And so they were able to take an animated film and a piece of writing and one little scene, and it's like, you know, last night I was thinking about it. I was like, dude, like if that scene was filmed with Pattinson, if that scene was filled with fucking Christian Bale or Michael Keaton, like, dude, that would be they would be talking about Oscar and shit for that.
They'd be raving about it, yeah.
Yeah, because it makes you feel kind of sick to your stomach a little bit that like he thinks that he has to put on a bat costume because his parents want him to. And I mean that you know, and he doesn't want to. He wants to be in love. And like that is just so crazy to me. So I love that it does that and it fills in these gaps. And you do sort of see a different life for Bruce, you know. If he would have not done the Batman thing and maybe thought that he got, you know, permission from his dead parents and moved on in a different direction, philanthropist, maybe like, you know, helped fucking people who were down on their luck, you know, like did a lot of like opening clinics and like things that you hear about him. Like if he devoted his life in that aspect to saving Gotham, what would Gotham look like? I mean, you wouldn't have a Joker, you wouldn't have a Riddler, you wouldn't have, you know, like whatever. And it's kind of like, it's just kind of a Greek tragedy because it's like, I'm of the firm belief that Batman and all of his rogues gallery is just escalation. And then, you know, they see, oh, he's doing it. I can be better. I can be worse than him. Like, I'm not afraid of this fucking bad. Because for the first couple years in Batman, chronologically, like, you know, in the lore, like, it's just him, like, beating up people who rob people and then going after the mafia. And then once he kind of chews through all that, then the Joker shows up. And it's that theme of, so at the tombstone, if he would have heard, yes, Bruce, go be happy, we wouldn't have, I mean, and it would suck because we wouldn't have Batman, but like for this, you feel for that character that like, man, not only are you about to mess up, you're about to create this whole other world of super villains because they see you doing it, you know? So there is that tragedy to it.
I agree. And I'm glad that you brought up that it kind of fills in the blanks of his origins and stuff, at least for the sake of this. Because this movie was produced between the first and second seasons of the series and follows Batman as he reconciles with a former lover, Andrea Beaumont, and faces a mysterious vigilante who is murdering Gotham City's crime bosses. And of course, the situation becomes even more complicated when the Joker enters the picture. The plot partly mirrors Mike W. Barr's Batman Year 2 comic book story arc, but features an original antagonist, the Phantasm, in place of the Reaper, while also borrowing elements from Batman Year 1 graphic novel, recounting how Bruce Wayne became Batman in his first attempts to fight crime. Speaking on the Phantasm, what were your thoughts? I like to know what your thoughts were when you were a kid when you first saw this character in the movie, and if that all changed at all, you know, the older you got watching it, because it's a really cool creation, really like visually a really cool creation. And I guess, you know, when you watch the movie now, as an adult, you're like, all right, not quite, you know, the villain of the piece either, you know, once you find out everything that's going on. But yeah, just a really, like you said, you brought up that whole the one sheet with the original like cover art for like the poster and everything. That's the only thing about the 4K is that they changed that to this, and it doesn't look as good. And you'll be actually able to see this too, because this episode will be on YouTube. You'll be one of the first to be on our so yeah, it doesn't look as cool. I mean, I'm not gonna hate on the release because it is a cool release and it looks and sounds great, but I wish it had the original cover.
Yeah, that poster was wild.
But yeah, that image of the Phantasm is just so interesting. Yeah, and that image of the Phantasm is just so interesting and cool. And I just kind of wanted to know what you thought when you first saw and then heard Phantasm speak.
Oh man, so like I love this villain. I'm a huge fan of this villain, and I know like they sort of play it as a one and done. I mean, there have been other appearances like in animated, like I know in like Batman Beyond, she comes back or whatever. And I know that the action figure that they released completely spoiled the movie, which is a huge misstep. They should at least have had it over the head so that when you buy it, you know. But like that was so bad. It was such a misstep. Yeah, it's like the person hilarious. And then the costume. It's like the Phantasm. Like, oh fuck, no. So I love this villain, and like I truly believe like the voice. I know they had Stacy Keach do the like the what's the guy's name? The first guy that gets killed. I can't think of his name.
Chucky's. It's Chucky Solid. No, he's like second. Stacy Keach does the voice of Carl Beaumont, of the father,
dad,
I believe. Yeah, and then also the voice of it.
Yeah. So he's like, it's like the other piece of this is like it's a little scary if you're a kid, even if you're an adult, like you know the guys in the parking lot and you just hear this Chucky Saul, you know, it's like okay, what, you know? So I love it, and I love that it's based on, you know, a little based on the Reaper, right? Like from those, from those comics. Is that an 80s comic or 70s?
Yeah, 80s.
So, and the Reaper in the comics looks so disturbing, which is great. And so this was their version. They kind of tooled around, obviously, and did different things. But I think this villain is so underrated. I loved the twist with the reveal of who it really was. It then again makes you want to go back and rewatch it because there's so many plot points that make sense after you find out who it is. And I think you know, like it's creepy. Like we all love like a Father Death, like Grim Reaper kind of a figure, but Batman's never had one like in that zone, like, you know, on the animated show. And so this was their first time introducing that. And like, who better for Batman to go against than another vigilante that's dressed like the fucking Grim Reaper, you know? So I think like that. That's so brilliant. And I think, you know, they were worried that, oh, it's a new villain, we have to get the Joker in there because originally the Joker wasn't part of it. And they're like, well, we have to have some familiar face in there or whatever. And it wound up working really well. But I mean, I will go on record and say that I think the Phantasm is one of his greatest foes or villains or whatever. And I think I'm gonna hold on to the bombshell until we talk a little bit more about it.
Okay. When I was watching it, I was trying to, because I think when I was younger, when the reveal happens, I think I was more like, it was very much like, like I was like deeply shocked. And then I'm like, oh, and then watching it now as an adult, and I was like, I guess they do like plant seeds and it's her. Because you're not really looking for it when you're a kid. But it was like a complete shock as a child. Like, oh wow, it was her. And they come, you know, I guess when you're a kid, you don't think, because they're obviously setting it up to be like the story that she's telling is like, oh, it's definitely her father. Like, I mean, it might, like, it's like he's the one doing this, right? So I've already, like, as a child, like, I've accepted the dialogue I'm hearing, like, it must be the dad. It had, like, why? Who else would it be? And I'm not thinking about all the little seeds they planted that gives you a hint that, like, oh no, this is her. And then when I was watching for this, I was like, oh, I guess it is. It's obvious that. But I mean, a good solid, you know, misdirection, you know, for an animated movie. I don't even call it a children's animated movie because I don't think it is, but I think they do a good job of like not totally playing their hand until they absolutely have to, and especially because of how they set her up too, that you don't really think that she would be, you know, parading at night and, you know, that costume, like she doesn't give off that vibe until she starts. One, I think when I watched it, how, you know, it was how so accepting she was of you know, when they have to rescue Bruce, you know, after I forgot how like they were shooting at him all willy-nilly in those scenes when they were like you know, when they almost like blew him up and like a bunch of other stuff. you don't really get the vibe about her until she doesn't really seem phased by a lot of the stuff that she's kind of seeing. But then
Mhm.
again, she is kind of like her dad was a nefarious character, so she was used to being around nefarious people. So I guess that could be why she's so like good with like what she's seeing and hearing. But at first though, you don't really get the. She seems pretty soft. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem like she would not be that character at all. So I just remember being completely shocked as a child that it was like that. And then the thing with the Joker, I was trying to figure out for this if I felt like he was shoehorned in or if it was a natural story and narrative like necessity to include him.
Yeah.
And I guess you can never get enough Mark Hamill doing the voice of the Joker, and that's always fun. Um, I still don't know how I feel if they feels like he's just kind of like forced in there because it does feel like he is put in just so like the viewers have a familiar villain that they are associated with that they already know. Um,
Mhm.
and not to say that it's like he's out of place. Like I still think how the way they use him is it works for the movie. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still struggling with that a little bit
I mean,
after watching it.
it does, but if you think these Andrea Beaumont and Bruce Wayne like went to college together, right, or high school or college, right? But they actually meet in a cemetery, and Bruce is like, brooding over his parents' grave, and then walks over and sees Andrea Beaumont having this like lovely conversation, as some humans do with
Yeah,
her dead mother, and the fact that they meet in a cemetery is so like so well written, right? And then
yeah,
the relationship evolves from there, and then when you find out that Andrea Beaumont, whom Bruce was going to marry, right? Just
yeah,
before, like, there's all of this other stuff happening. Like, he proposes to her, and then just before, or just after, like, that's how he like that where he took her is like he discovers the Bat Cave. So it's like these
yeah,
choices are presented to him over and over and over again, and then come to find out that she's the Phantasm, right? She's the one under the Reaper mask,
yeah,
and then have the greatest Batman foe of all time show up, but show up in a way where I think in continuity, it was the Joker who. Do we know in Batman animated series continuity if the Joker killed Bruce's parents?
I know they do that in the '89 movie. I'm trying to figure out if they
Sure.
do that on the show. I don't think they do on the show. I will look into that while we're doing this. While you're talking.
Yeah. So you have this person who is a love interest, who he's almost going to give up on being the Batman to be with this woman and have a happy life, right? But then her father gets bumped off, right? And so
Yeah,
she becomes this vigilante who does kill and goes after the mafia. And then what I think is interesting with your Joker point, which I'm leading up to, I promise, is that you have these two people who are in love, both wearing masks, both vigilantes, both going after criminals. And then you have the one person who's ruined Bruce's life the most, right? And
yeah,
ruined her life the most by taking her father. And she does or tries to do what Bruce could never. And I think that is so interesting to me that she's willing to kill the Joker and he's not. And when this is the eternal debate amongst Batman fans, like, should he just whack the guy or what? And then,
right.
I think like in some of Batman the Dark Knight Returns, like, or the comic book, like the Joker does die eventually, and it's violent, and it's not necessarily at Batman's hands, but it's close. And so she does this thing that he's not able to do, and there's her, there's him, both their lives are full of trauma and tragedy, and there's one person standing in between them as a little cameo. It's like, hey, I pretty much caused you guys to be to be the way you are. I create,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. And then she takes him and fucking, what they want us to think. Like, she tries to fully go through and kill him.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's a really interesting play, a really interesting point, because they're the same person you know, in terms of the loss and putting on a mask at night and beating the shit out of people. She kills, he doesn't. And then there's his greatest foe, her greatest foe. And I love that when she grabs onto him and the smoke spirals around them and they just disappear. It's the coolest shit ever. Yeah.
I think what's interesting is that they're both working with this whole duality thing as well. And and like she even throws it in his face when he basically is like, you don't have to do this, and she's basically like, kind of you're one to talk because you're doing it too. But the difference between the two of them, I guess, he still has his humanity because he has a line that he won't cross, and clearly, as we saw when she is the Phantasm and she's bumping off these crime figures, she is cool with crossing that line because whatever humanity she had in her, they took that away. I mean, when all stuff happened with her father. So I think that's the interesting thing, that there's a difference between them, even though they are one and the same, and they've chosen to take on these identities to take on these bad guys and all that. They just have different methods of doing it, and then that is the key difference, is that he still has his humanity and she clearly doesn't. And I thought that was like really interesting. And I loved when those walls were kind of broken down. Like once he's seen that this is who, he knows it's her and all that, she really does, like, for the next few moments of the film, like, drops all the kind of sensitive pretenses that she's kind of had in their interactions beforehand. Like, she basically is like, no, this is how this is going to go. And I think that's and that's when you can really tell that she is not she is a much darker place than Bruce Wayne has ever been up to that point, which makes that is what makes them so fundamentally different, even though it seems like they are one and the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think, and that to me is the true story of these people that they're crisscrossing. They lose each other, but then they come back together. But then did they really lose each other? Because they kind of both chose to do this vigil, to wear a mask, right? I know the original title of the film was supposed to be Batman Masks, which I thought was really interesting. But like Mask of the Phantasm obviously has a better ring to it. Yeah. But I think the fact that she does what Batman's not capable of doing by taking the Joker, by killing the Joker, whatever we're gonna say. We all know he survives. Fucking spoiler alert, and so does she. Spoiler alert. But I also think it's interesting that, like, Andrea and Bruce's first date is at like the world of tomorrow or whatever, and it's sort of like they go to this like World's Ferry kind of a place where it's they take a little like roller coaster ride through like this representation of like where Gotham is, and they're in college and they're young. There is no Joker yet. The mobs runs deep, but Gotham hasn't become the Gotham we know. And so it's like this representation of like what a beautiful future could be. Right. And that's where the final confrontation goes down, is this decrepit, destroyed version of the place where they had their first date. And it's like him, it's like her, and the fucking Joker. It just not get any more well written than that in terms of like like psychologically. If we're talking about trauma, if we're talking about PTSD, I think because it happened to her when she was an adult with the father getting clipped, her PTSD is still raw, and she's still, Bruce had his whole life to brood and sort of come to terms with it. And obviously he never comes to terms with it, and he's dressed like a bat, beating people up. But for her, of course, she's going to be more violent, right? These people only understand violence. These people only understand pain and hurt. So as an adult, I think she's at a disadvantage because she's just going to put on the costume and start murdering, right? Which, if that happened to a child, it's not as easy for, a kid to put on a fucking, unless you're Michael Myers, but that's a whole other episode. And so I just think, that there's something to be said about her wounds are more fresh than Bruce's.
I agree. And I also thought it was interesting too, because I think Batman Returns tried to draw these parallels too, but maybe not as effectively because you have that kind of, I think it's like one or two moments with Catwoman and him where one is where they're at that ball and they're dancing and they kind of do the whole mistletoe dialogue exchange, and then they both realize that like, oh, they've had that exchange before, but when they were in full like, costume, and then they have that moment where she starts crying and she's like, does that mean that we have to start fighting? And then like he kind of holds her and they're just going to leave together and most likely talk until the Penguin like, crashes the party and turns everything to shit. And then they have that moment again towards the end where, like she wants to kill Max Shrek. Like she's like, this is not, this person destroyed my life. And he's trying to convince her not to, in certain ways to like kind of save her humanity. It's not as like maybe as well written and as detailed as this, but it like I love watching the two differences with how like that was presented. I think it's definitely more fleshed out here. Where you're right, like like once that duality is discovered, right? It's the moment of like, oh, how far gone is she? And it's clear that she's pretty far gone and like she has her reasons and like he already knows why because he's figured out everything that's why she's taken up that mantle and all that. And it's much more like you said, like I think fresh for her because she's an adult and she's had to deal with that trauma as a fully formed adult that knows right from wrong, and that kind of is in control of at least of what she chooses to do. As a child, you're like, okay, how do I get through this? What do I do? How do I fight this? As an adult, she's like, okay, I can have the resources to fight it the way I want to fight it, and that's what she chooses to do. And I think it's kind of interesting. I think it's interesting too because when I was watching it, I was like, they have that moment after he essentially almost dies, like he gets hurt badly, and they save him. She picks him up. She saves him, and they come to this kind of come to Jesus moment about who they are, at least who he is, and because she's not being 100% honest yet, and you kind of think like, okay, like does she believe they can try again? And in her mind, it's like, I just got to get rid of like this one like final
one guy,
and like in her mind, it's like, I wonder if it's like, if once I get rid of him, we can totally be happy together, or if she kind of knows it like that, or she just kind of saying it in hopes of like making herself believe it, or if she does believe it, if she's like, hey, like, we can have what we want as soon as I knock off this last person that's responsible for all the trauma I've been going through. I thought that all that stuff was pretty interesting too.
I mean, you're dead on, and the way I get it is, I think she would have hung it up. To be honest with you, I really do, because you just get that vibe that it was just vengeance on a certain few. Whereas like with Bruce, like he just is out every night, just like pummeling somebody for stealing whatever. And like, I think, also it's probably important. And again, this is just my sort of take on it, is Bruce is responsible for the creation of the Phantasm in a way, in the same way that he's responsible like for the Joker, right? Like he had been in a mask running around, and all these villains had popped up for a year or two. And like, do you think that, I mean, why couldn't it just be she's got a couple of guns in her purse? She slinks in the office and blows their brains out and nobody knows anything, right? No, she had to dress up, right? And so where'd she get that idea, you think? There's a bat running around?
To create this intimidating figure.
To really make it stick, she adopted that, like, let's scare the living terror out of them and then kill them, right? And so I think there's a sort of a narrative string there. And again, like, we all have dark sides and we all have choices at how we embrace them. I lean into mine sometimes for fun. I mean, I'm not out at night fucking breaking people's necks in Chicago or whatever, but
a little bit more dangerous out there.
Yeah, well, it's not even that. It's just like well, first of all, Chicago, you are around Chicago and you're like, I'm in Gotham, this is wild. Like literally right, I have a train on a platform running like right next to me, which like which is crazy. And it is very Gotham-esque, and they've shot a lot of the movies here and whatever, but like I think, you know, we do have a choice, like, as to how we embrace our dark sides, and I don't think they should be ignored, and I don't think they should be, you know, our trauma should be at front of mind, or else it'll take control of you in the back of mind. And we love Batman, and we love you know, this Phantasm character or whatever, but like they're kind of letting the fucking the gremlins run the ship, right? Like and that's another point, is these are two adults who have you know, resorted to violence to make themselves feel better about their trauma and revenge. And you know, I'm a fan of revenge. I think it's great. Again, it's so amazing to me that this animated film was able to tackle such themes of trauma for two adults that resonate. If you watch it and you watch it the right way, you'll see that these are two people who are suffering greatly, and they could have helped each other, but instead, you know, they kind of fucking chose another path.
At odds. And I also love too. She is like a total the same as him in a lot of ways, because like she's not a metahuman like some of the other people in the DC universe. She is a trained fighter, like that. She even surprises like Bruce at one point with how like good she is, and like even in their initial kind of like fun little meet cutes with each other. And you know, and she's taken on these other, like how she's able to create Phantasm as a whole is like is almost the same exact way as he created Batman. It's a lot of like smoke and mirrors really that they both became really good at. And I remember when my friend first saw this, he was like, do they really fully explain how she comes up with all this stuff? I was like, the fighting we saw, you know, but even though she doesn't really need to fight as the Phantasm, she doesn't really do a lot of that. And you know, everything else is like, you know, they make it clear that she's smart, she's a critical thinker. She, you know, if you had all this time to really hone in on one to let all that vengeance like fester while you're trying to create this other thing that you want to use as a way of striking fear into your enemies, like you could tell she would definitely have the time, much like Batman, to create this other persona and it be completely realistic that she has honed all of these necessary skills to make that work. So I never questioned it at all.
No, and neither did I, right? And it's like it's Gotham. I'm sure there's a fucking disappearing smoke dealer on every corner. Number one. But number two, I think it's super viable. You know, I think that for this film, I think they swung big and they went for like this scary ass fucking villain, and I think that works so well in this movie. And it's weird to me that they never used the character as much. I mean, man, you know, the other point before I go into that, let me just make this point real quick, is that one, if you go watch, Bruce has a thing for dysfunctional redhead women. So like that woman throws a drink on him at the party, she's a redhead, right? Like Andrea Beaumont, she's a redhead, right? A little dysfunctional, and she also is wearing like the same earrings as Bruce's mother, and they keep showing the portrait of the parents, and then Andrea, whatever. So he's like trying to fix that, trying to like kind of, you know, mommy issues, daddy issues too, but like she sort of represents she sort of represents that. And so I thought that was very, very interesting, because it's like this track that runs alongside of everything that's going on, that like he kind of is like dating a woman, that all these women that sort of resemble his mom a little bit. Mom, okay. Do you whatever, but she's like, Andrea is actually wearing the same earrings as the Martha in the painting, which is crazy. And that's totally on purpose, obviously, because he saw himself, you know, with her and a family and whatever. You know, we've had, you know, the animated series gave us Harley Quinn, you know, and now Margot Robbie has made Harley Quinn, you know, that was the first live action Harley Quinn, technically, I guess. And then now Lady Gaga is about to do Harley Quinn. And so like Harley Quinn's like, in popular culture, right? And this is where
Yeah.
I'll give you the bombshell.
Okay.
I think it's time. It's well overdue that Andrea Beaumont and the Phantasm, that they get their moment in the darkness, right? As it were, right? I think that, and again, I'm going to do what I did on the Michael Mann episode. If you ever interview Matt Reeves, I
Mhm.
think that they should have Andrea Beaumont or whomever under the Phantasm mask as the big bad, not in the Batman film, but probably the third, and have it be like this mirror image. Like, imagine a Matt Reeves version that looks more like the Reaper than the Phantasm, right?
Yeah.
And it's the rain soaked Matt Reeves, really reality grounded, driven thing that then can become like, well, you're doing it, I'm whatever. And there's a
Yeah.
love triangle between Andrea Beaumont and Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman. I just think it could be, it's time. And I think that if you really
Yeah.
want to throw the gauntlet down and like do like a legendary Batman like film, I think I think Matt Reeves has got to bring the Phantasm in for a on-camera villain. I mean, just imagine how scary that would look and what the repercussions would be of someone that he's in love with, and is in as much pain as he is, that's just brutal and dark and violent and not afraid to kill. I mean, that's a story I want to see.
That actually would be cool. And I would think that over the years of this character, I mean, it's viewed as like a pretty underrated Batman villain. But I think that fanboys love the interpretation of the Phantasm character and
Mm-hmm.
love what that character represents. I think it would work in live action. I would love to see it in live action. Um, Now, I guess the only playing devil's advocate, I think the only problem with it, and there's no real problem, is convincing the casual moviegoer like, well, who is this?
Sure.
And like, and that's the only thing that. However, if I was making the movie, I would just be like, hey, we'll promote it in the way where they'll think this villain is so cool that they won't really care that it's not the Joker, it's not Two-Face, it's not whoever. I
Yeah.
would love to see that because I think there'd be a good story there, especially if it involves someone that he's in love with, and then struggling what to do uh in live action form with with that information once he figures out like who she
Sure.
is.
I
And then
mean,
it can go even darker too than what they do in this animated movie. So yeah, there's
mhm.
like a lot of potential there. And like the fact that we haven't really, I mean, I know they, like you said, they use the character again on Batman Beyond, but I would love to see this character pop up again in a major way in
Yeah.
some major Batman lore. And the live action ones I know that it's probably even for Warner Brothers, they'll be like, well, no one knows no one knows who it is. But I don't know. I would make an argument that a lot of people do, and that's where good marketing comes in. You make people know who. You either make people understand who the character is, are you shrouded in so much mystery that they're intrigued by who it is and they want to find out.
Yeah, I mean, and think about like, go into your Rolodex in your brain of who would be a good Andrea Beaumont that's emotional and like that kind of like, traumatic acting, like whatever. And I'll even take it a step further because they always change things around for the movies, and I love that because it keeps it fresh. Maybe we think it's Andrea Beaumont the whole movie, and Andrea Beaumont gets killed by the Phantasm, and it's somebody else. But
And somebody else, oh,
bring that character,
little,
like
little
have
bait and
the
switch.
have the love triangle between Selena Kyle and Andrea Beaumont. Have Andrea Beaumont be tortured. Have him starting to, pick up that, oh shit, this Phantasm fucker that I'm fighting on the top of the train every night there's no way, but it all makes sense. It's Andrea Beaumont. So he calls her, she shows up, they have this heated discussion. Phantasm shows up, sing, kills whatever. Maybe she was involved with it. I mean, you could do so many things with it. And I think if you give that to a Matt Reeves, I think that this Phantasm character, like, it gets its day, finally, that character.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it's weird to me that that people haven't. I think she's been in a couple comic books. I think, I think they actually introduced her into mainline continuity in the Batman comics. But like, then you have this Reaper piece from the 80s that maybe it follows more of that kind of a thing, and it's more based on the Phantasm. But I just think, dude, that would be one hell of a and if you want Barry Keoghan in there to fucking get in between them and cause some shit, there you go. Like, it's all there. I think the writing on Mask of the Phantasm and the level of adult trauma, PTSD, like really emotional suffering, and this Phantasm character, it just hasn't gotten the level of appreciation that it deserves. And so what better way, right? And then, like, I mean, why do you think they just didn't do like a direct-to-video sequel? I mean, we would have taken anything with that character.
I would have taken, and they would have done well on home video. Granted, like, since Master of the Phantasm did really well on home video, what it kind of reminds me of? Like, to have like a one-off villain like this that it looks so cool and it's so visually arresting. It kind of reminds me of how George Lucas chose to use Darth Maul in episode 1, where it's just like it's a cool looking villain, only in like a handful of scenes, gets a one big fight scene at the end, right? And then he dies. They kill him off at the end of episode 1, right? And then but he's used all over the marketing, right? Because he's a cool looking image, and I feel like but like much more cooler. And I know in subsequent they've done more stuff with Darth Maul, but like initially that's what it felt like. It was supposed to be like this one-off thing, and like that was it. It's weird that something that it feels iconic to me, like that the imagery of the Phantasm feels iconic, the character itself feels iconic, that it's weird that it was just a one-off. And I know we got her again in Batman Beyond, but like I felt like we could have used. I mean, having Andrea Beaumont come back at some point during the run of the animated series would have been cool to see, because she survives, and that would have been. I think that would have been great. I think it's so interesting that that it is a one-off villain, and that's it. That's
it doesn't get any more Gotham than that.
No, you're right. I agree, and it's unfortunate because it's. I mean, I guess on the other hand, it's like, hey, like, fans know it's this one piece of really cool, iconic imagery and character work for this one particular project, and I guess we should be appreciative that we got the one, but I think there was more to be done there. I mean, there's a lot to explore, that kind of and how that duality of that relationship would have grown had he believed that, like, oh, she's dead, she's gone, whatever, and then to have her come back and see how much she has changed since even their last encounter. Like, is she even more far gone? If she even more far gone, or has she kind of found some inner peace, or like whatever it is? It would have been interesting to see where their characters would have met again at a certain point, at least in the original run of the anime.
I mean, she never even popped up on the show, which is like weird. And that, at the end of the film, we see her on a boat talking to some doofus, you know what I mean? And so she
who like is drawn to look like he's about to hit on her. It's like the way they drew him.
That's so awesome. Yeah, is it like creepy ass fucking mouth and shit? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's weird because if you and me are sitting around and someone's like, hey guys, like, you have 15 minutes to come up with a sequel pitch, like, easy. Andrea Beaumont comes back, Bruce and her, he retires as Batman, they're living a happy life, and then all of a sudden there's copycats of the Phantasm, right? And so Batman Mask of the Phantasms, and then there's your direct-to-video sequel. It probably won't be that great, but at least we get something, to have her just shove off literally on a boat, and then she has sporadic appearances every 15 years in comics is really kind of sad,
Yeah, it is. I like, if we're sitting around thinking of how they can use the character again, I'm sure these creatives, I wonder if they even thought of, like, let's see how we can, like, utilize it, and they actually know what they're doing,
Yeah, I mean, imagine what a Matt Reeves version would just look like, and then imagine what it would sound like. like we wouldn't have the smoke and all that stuff, obviously, but like, Batman in that opening scene to the Batman 2022, like the music that's just building and you know, like he's using the darkness as sort of like these portals almost, so like you suck people in, they don't know where I'm at, but whatever. Do the same scene, but just do it about the Phantasm, you know what I mean? And it's like, because they're like sort of mirror images of each other. And you know, we're going to see in the next couple of films, you know, how Batman deals with escalation and how he deals with, okay, we kind of trust you, we probably won't arrest you now, like just keep doing good. And maybe he has a couple wins, I'm sure he'll have some big losses, but then what do you do when you kind of feel like you have come into your own as this creature of the night, and some fucking asshole shows up dressed as Father Death, and but this person's only killing criminals? How do you battle that? How do you fight yourself? You know, a harder, tougher version of yourself. And I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I do like the fact that even when when they decided to go theatrical, they gave them a little bit more money. And I just wanted to comment on the opening of the movie, the opening title sequence, which is like a completely like computer generated version of Gotham City with the score. Shirley Walker does the score for the movie. It's all very reminiscent of like the kind of Elfman scores that we got from like '89 and Returns. But I totally forgot how epic her opening music. Well, actually, the music throughout the whole thing is really good. But that opening title sequence with her music is so good. Probably like some of the best pieces of like Batman music I've ever heard. And I just wanted to shout that out because I totally forgot about it. Like when I popped it in, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot it starts like this. And it was blaring through my surround sound, and it was amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. And also, I watched a thing last night, just to brush up even further. And that opening score is actually all of the musicians' names run and sung backwards.
Oh, that's cool. So I like the kind of like Latin, like sounding lyrics. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to make sure it got through, she included all the producers and directors at Warner Brothers too, and she won it. They got it to stick. It stayed in the movie, which is really cool. Really cool.
That opening music is so good. It's very. It kind of sets the tone that this is not just a taking the animated series from TV and putting it on the big. They wanted to show that this is cinematic. And not just the TV series transferred over to the big screen, which there could have, that could have easily been the case too, because they could have just been like, hey, like we'll just release it, we'll just cut together like 3 half-hour episodes and make a movie, and but no, that opening kind of shows exactly what that intention was, and it's so big and so good. Like I was thinking to myself, because the opening crawl to '89 Batman is probably tops as far as that's concerned. But then I was thinking about Batman Returns, and then this after I listened to this, and because Batman Returns actually has a really cool opening. Like Danny Elfman's music is a little bit more gothic and a little bit different in for the opening of Batman Returns. But I actually like hearing this like a bit more than the second movie. I don't know if I could ever get anything to top the opening.
Oh man, that opening
of '89 Batman. But but that music was amazing.
Insane. Yeah, no, I mean, and even the animated show, the music is just fire. They were like, okay, we're gonna make like this is for kids, but it's also like for adults. Like, and that all that stuff with the gray ghost and like
another good episode. Yep,
dude. Yeah, it's just like there's so much to mine there, and it took them too long to get Harley Quinn into the mainstream. Like, don't wait on this Phantasm thing, the gray ghost thing, like that. They really pulled off the look of. And it feels a bit on steroids, like because they do in this film, they do show you little like more adult corners, right, of Gotham that they don't show you in the show, in the film. Yeah. And in the film, like the first thing you see, right, is this casino. Like, oh, we're gambling, and okay, yeah. And the name of the casino is the Shady Lady, which is just tells you what's about to happen in the movie. So it's like,
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so cool, man. It's like they gave them a little blood. They let you knock the Joker's teeth out. They killed a couple people, like whatever,
Yeah.
and then they gave you like these more adult embezzlement, casino, mob murder. I mean, there's guns, like, and they're actually shooting at arteries, not at the sky, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like it was very cool, and it makes you wonder, had this been a critical, let's just say it made 4 times what the budget was, where they pulled in 25 million. I mean, what do you think would have happened?
I wonder if that probably would have been enough for them. I guess like a $6 million budget. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming they were hoping for again. I just wonder when they realized what the writing was on the wall. They gave it its little Christmas Day release. And they were like, okay, this is not going to do what we thought it was going to do, and it feels like they just immediately like pulled it like right away as soon as they realized that. I think they said it made like 1.2 million within its first 2 days, and then they were just like, and just they probably let it like slog along through the end of the year, and then just pulled it, and that's crazy. And like like I said, like they said from start to finish, the film was completed within 8 months, and that is, like I said, like we said, for animated project is not a lot of time at all. And Joe, in terms of like promoting it, I don't even know if like I don't know what time of the year would have been the best. I don't know if Christmas Day was the best time to
probably not
to release it. I mean, there of course there's some dark stuff that does well on Christmas, and animated movies do well on Christmas Day. But in 1993, I don't think that was the case. Would have been the case for something like this. I just don't understand when like a studio puts like, they're like, hey, we're gonna do this on home video, but then they're like, hey, no, we're gonna give you a lot more money and we're gonna release it theatrically. Then why not give it the tools necessary to succeed? And then instead of just cutting it off of the kneecaps, it's always been strange to me that you're gonna put more money in something and then not give it the tools it needs to succeed. That's what's strange about the whole release pattern of this.
Yeah, and not to mention that you have the show of which the movie is taking place in running currently.
That's running.
You could just fucking blow it up. Like you can have every station that's like we're doing a marathon countdown in celebration of. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. And you think in '89 they would have. I think truly Batman Returns like was a punch to the fucking balls for Warner Brothers, because that really seemed to mess them up, because the marketing strategy, that we see Kevin Feige run, it's the same playbook as Batman '89, right? And like to merchandise, to have like, again, one of the things that affected my life as a creator the most was just the fact that the marketing for Batman '89 was just a fucking bat symbol and no name.
It's still the template for how you market a big tentpole release. Like I'm so excited too, because like Jackson's never seen. Everyone don't hate him. He's mentioned on the show before. He's never seen Batman '89, and this will be the first year that he sees it, because it'll be 35 in June. And what I can't wait to talk about with him when we talk about that movie is just how important that marketing campaign was. And like you said, how it starts so simple, because it's just that simple in the beginning. It's just, and I mean, it's just like, I mean, it's that symbol says so much, but they were just like, we're not gonna really give an indication of like what the style is. This might hint at what the style is, because this looks like a little different from what you were even accustomed to, even with the symbol. We're gonna show you that, and I think they did too. They had like that little like trailer cut together before like the movie was completely done, and then that was another thing that they used to sell it, and it really did become like the one we continue to use today on how to market it. And my thing with Batman Returns, I always got the visual of, there was a bunch of people in the offices, and Tim Burton was like, I don't know if I want to come back. And they're like, well, we want you to. You made us a hit movie. And then he was like, you know what? I'll come back if you give me complete creative control. And I just imagine them not paying attention. It's like, yeah, you do whatever you want.
Yeah,
Like not looking at his dailies, not doing anything, not paying attention to like a thing that what he was doing. And then they didn't really know what he was doing until they saw it with the rest of everyone. It was like, oh, that's what he was doing. That's how I imagine that all went down. Because I can't imagine them like being I can't imagine the studio being completely okay with like. I mean, I love Batman Returns. I think it's good in its own right, but like I can't imagine the way they had to have known that parents are going to be like, okay, this is not what we expected. And it's not like 89 isn't dark. I mean, it's dark. It's dark in a different way. Certainly, but there's dark, and then there's like Tim Burton dark, and this is like Batman Returns is very much a Tim Burton movie, but I just really don't think they were paying attention to what he was doing.
Yeah, not at all. And I think honestly, I think he was like, I'm Tim Burton and like I'm the shit and like I don't care because like to be honest with you, like Batman Returns angers me because it could have been a really dope film, right? But instead you have Bruce Wayne, who's like this smart, like kind of like aloof kind of a guy, like give Knox a grant and all that kind of like whatever, right?
Yeah.
In the first one, and in the second one, he's like literally slobbering over himself over Selena Kyle. He kind of acts like a fucking idiot when he meets her the first couple times. The Wayne Manor is a different Wayne Manor, and there's no explanation at all. Like it's just a different house on a cliff, like and so Danny DeVito as the Penguin. The guy's like in a little race car at the end, and the clown. I mean, whatever. And so, I mean, there's some interesting things that like the circus originally, like the clowns, were written to be the leftovers from Joker's gang that Penguin took over. Got it, cool. But then why is this so cheesy? Like Michelle Pfeiffer, iconic as I mean, dude.
If there's anything in that movie that works, it's her.
But I think on the marketing, I think they're like, oh my God, we set a new precedent. So much so that we don't have enough action figures to sell. We got to reprint the old 70s toys for 89. It works so good. Let's duplicate it for Batman Returns. And it was working. And then the Penguin, goo out of the mouth, and McDonald's got scared, and then whatever. And so I think they were doubting themselves when they went to market Phantasm, because I think they're like, I don't know how much money we want to spend on this or like whatever, but we don't know what this is going to do because it did come out after Batman Returns. So I think they were kind of like not confident, and I think that probably affected it.
I think so too. So I just pulled up something from the Omniplex podcast, and they were speculating why the film didn't do well because they were like film got really good reviews upon release, even though it took 8 months from start to finish. By all accounts, to everyone that worked on it, the production was still pleasant, though it wasn't like they didn't like working on it. The one button point they put in, it says it begins with a trailer. They said, I've never seen a less coherent trailer in my life. All that it tells you is that there is a Batman animated movie coming. There's none of the big set pieces. There's no plot. There's probably as much text as animation, and it tells you right away nobody at the studio knew what they had. They talk about the film coming out on Christmas Day. They said on the same day, Grumpy Old Men was out, which was actually dominating the box office then. And that Massive Phantasm was third in line for them because the Pelican Brief was also out. And there were a few other movies that were dominating the box office as well. And then they say Warner Brothers decided to not screen it for critics in advance. And they said that, as you might guess, the film is now critically beloved. It has an 85% positive score on Rotten Tomatoes, and Siskel and Ebert loved it, but said they wish they would have had a chance to see it theatrically. They didn't get to see it until it came out on home video.
Wow.
And Siskel actually said it was above Batman Returns and slightly below 89 when he saw it. And then they also said, and then there's the botched exposition. This is not on WB, it's on theaters. Why was this movie only shown mostly during the day? It did a random sample of several newspapers. It paid during a random sample of newspapers they found during that time, it played past 7 p.m. at one theater in Little Rock, none in Pittsburgh, and only twice in Houston. That's the release Jetsons the movie got, and that movie bombed as well. And then they said and then they said actually the core problem, which is could be why we also love it so much, though, is Batman Mask of the Phantasm isn't a kids movie. It's played fine to them, sure, but it's not a kids movie. It's a deeply adult film. For one thing, the plot is heavy on double crosses and a lot of very dull details kids don't necessarily get. But mostly the film is so deeply nihilistic and bleak. It's about the ethics of killing. It plays becoming Batman as a literal horror. Look, the adult films play at being mature, but the film says trauma will ruin you, and no matter what you do, unless you learn to move on from it, you're destroyed. And it places Batman, an iconic superhero, hard in the latter. There's a lot of reasons why it could have completely bombed then. And there are some good points to be made about I didn't realize they didn't screen it for critics when it came out. That is also insane.
Yeah, no, that is insane. Well, and I think, we're learning now, and I, in the set, well, more in the 50s and 60s, 40s, whatever, like they took Batman out of, the original stuff is pretty vengeance based. At one point in the early comics, like Batman like carries a gun and shit, and so it is this sort of like vigilante vengeance whatever thing. That's how Batman starts. But what I think we run into in the culture of Batman at DC Comics is that, like, in the 40s and 50s, and then they had the comics code. And I hate this, but he's like running around in that blue and gray suit and underwear with some little kid dressed in red and yellow. You know what I mean? And it's like they made him a super villain. Yeah. The Justice League would never work with Batman. They'd be like, "You're a piece of shit. Like you beat people up. Like you're get out of here. Like we can. I can see who you are through your mask. I have X-ray vision, Bruce. Like Bruce fucking Wayne. Get out of here." Yeah. And so I think that now with stuff like Mask of the Phantasm, they showed you who Batman really is. He's a vigilante, and he is tortured as much by the events that have happened to him as the way he chooses to deal with them. And for us, it's entertainment because we all want to be Batman, right? We all want to put the costume on and zip around and do all the cool stuff, right? But for the character, he's in agony. And in this movie, he's crying at his parents' gravestone. He's scared when he puts the mask on and Alfred sees Batman for the first time. Alfred has like a "I'm gonna throw up" like kind of reaction, and that's another moment in the movie that's so brilliant because this guy's dressing as a bat. So before he was in the blue underwear and and there was Batmite and all these things, like he's almost the Punisher of the DC universe, but people don't treat him like that. They want to have him on the team and like whatever. And how well has that gone, Zack Snyder?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it hasn't gone well because you can't have this guy who can't fly and chooses to use fear as a tool to work with all these happy, colorful superheroes and shit. So I think Batman at his best is alone. I think I hate all the Bat. I mean, I don't hate it, but like I'm not a fan of the Bat family. I as a kid, I loved Tim Drake as Robin, but get rid of that shit. It should be him by himself. And just like going after that vengeance. But like as the decades tick on, we realize what Phantasm was trying to tell us 20 whatever years ago, and that is that. This is somebody who is really good at what they do, but it's violent and it's a self mechanism that is like supposed to bring him healing, and it never does and it never will, and now he's stuck doing it for the rest of his life because he's addicted to it. That's Batman.
Agreed. Before we wrap things up here, I wanted to talk about Kevin Conroy a little bit. I want to know because, like you said earlier, like this is, you're like, if this is not in your top 5, Batman films, like it should be. I wanted to ask you, like, as far as live action, animated, whatever, for you as a fan, when you think of Batman, where does Kevin Conroy fit in for you? Like, I mean, he is. I know for me, he is. When I think of at least the voice, the persona, like he's one of the first people that, if not the first person that pops up. So I want to get your thoughts on on what he brought to that character.
A lot, and the thing is like not only is he the voice for the animated series and for the film that we talked about today, but like also like in so many other, I've seen Aaron Eckhart's version of Batman, which is cool, like in one of the animated series, whatever. But there's just nobody who has that sort of like, I'm violent yet can play the Bruce. You know what I mean? Like he just really nails it. And when he leans into that, I mean, I saw him on a podcast a few years ago where they had him like read lines from like The Dark Knight or something, and like the guy who was hosting the podcast was like crying. You know what I mean? Because like it is he Kevin Conroy is that epic. He is that he is Bruce Wayne. He is Batman for more than just a generation. And if you're a real Batman fan, and I'm not trying to start a nerd war or whatever, but I'm just saying like he deserves his place in the pantheon with Keaton, with Bale, with Pattinson now and with Affleck. He deserves his place in there. I think in the future there'll be more celebration for him, just similar to how we, I mean, Adam West, right? As corny as that stuff is, like he's just now in the last 5 years because of his death and his contribution to Batman.
He now has his place. He has his place.
Yeah, he has his place. And so if you look at the body of work from Adam West versus the body of work from Kevin Conroy, it's vast. And if you haven't played the Batman Arkham games, Kevin Conroy is Batman in that, and you actually are Batman in that. And so like it is a very beautiful experience to go and play Batman voiced by Kevin Conroy over the course of 3 games, and you get to traverse Gotham, and it's truly a gift. And I think that he belongs right in there with all the names I mentioned. And I think his contributions will be felt long after the next like 30 years. I think people are really gonna, and there'll be a lot of like found footage stuff, and hope to God they do a big budget documentary. I know they did one about him before, but like we need that like 10 episode HBO uncut docu-series on Kevin Conroy. He deserves it. He deserves his statue at Warner Brothers, all the things, right? I'm glad he got to be Bruce on one of the TV shows and on camera. That's cool or whatever. But I think if you're a Batman fan, you know that like this man, dude, I mean, imagine like, I just wonder like what he studied, like what comic books did he read? What books on trauma did he pick up on Amazon to
That's
learn
interesting that you brought that up, because like I guess when he walked in for it compared to when he had auditioned for the show, they said that he didn't have a vast knowledge of the comic books. I think this is something he learned after he started doing the character, and he was like an actor. He wasn't a voice actor, so I think that had a lot to do with probably how good he was, because he wasn't just playing it as a voice actor. They said that when he would be in the booth, he would really be acting this out as if he was playing it almost in live action. And I guess they said what you find out later, I mean, for people that knew him, he was a gay man struggling with like coming out too. So he actually identified with a lot of the whole, I guess, the loneliness, that part of being Batman, and dealing with all that. So he was able to tap into some of those things that probably worked really well. I know another thing that also really helped. They said that a lot of the key players recorded together, so that informed a lot of the performances. Like Mark Hamill and him frequently recorded together in the booth. Dana Delaney said that she recorded with him, doing Andrea Beaumont and all their stuff. So they were able to kind of bounce off each other, and you kind of feel that when you're watching this, that you could tell that they're not separated when and recording it and sending it in, and they're just putting it together. So there's a lot of cool things I learned. I mean, I don't know everything about him, but there was just things that I just learned, just small for this, that maybe appreciate him a bit more. I mean, I had no idea that one, that he I thought he had a career in voice acting. I mean, I would have guessed that, but like he came into this as an actor, and they said what they saw about him is that he looked the part. He looks like Hollywood, like good looking guy, and they're like, well, I guess like, when he walked in, like one of the ladies was like, well, we're gonna pick him, right? And they're like, well, we got to hear him talk first, like basically. And they said like no one was getting it right. No one was getting that kind of like dual persona, getting the Bruce Wayne part right, getting Batman right. They were trying too hard to be Batman, like kind of like dirtying up their voice and all that. And what came to him, it was just really natural. And what he did was what a lot of people believe the character is that Batman is the real him and Bruce Wayne is the secret identity, and that's how he approached the role.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's why I think his Batman was so informed and not so much like he was putting on a voice, because he felt like that was the real person, and Bruce Wayne was the one that had to fake it. So I thought that approach to that was like so cool to learn about.
No, totally. And I just recalled that he is Bruce Batman's voice in the animated version of The Killing Joke, which did have a theatrical release, which is way darker, right? So if you're a fan of Kevin Conroy, go buy that one, because that's a good. People give it shit because of the sex scene between.
Yep. I know what you're talking about.
Bruce and or Batman and Batgirl, but like, I think it's great. Whatever. But whatever. But like he voices, and Mark Hamill voices the Joker there too. So that's play the Arkham games. Go definitely pick up. I mean, you can tell in Phantasm that Kevin Conroy that scene at the grave. Oh man, that should be one of the all-time, and that's Kevin Conroy through and through. And he probably had a lot of fun with that. Like, I hope that they release the extras. I actually own all the whole series, and as well as Phantasm. And then there was another movie they did with or it was called like Batman Sub-Zero or something.
Zero with Mr. Freeze.
I've never seen it.
Mr. Freeze, I think I hadn't seen that either. I kind of want to check it out, but then I might be disappointed that it sounds
I was like, I don't want.
I know the cover art's really cheesy looking. I do remember that much about it. But I really do think Master of the Phantasm was probably his best moment as the character, and I think he kind of saw that he was getting like a full opportunity to give that character as much as he could, like an arc from start to finish. In a motion picture. What I thought was like, I mean, whether given the fact that it's animated, it doesn't really matter. It really does encompass some of the best moments of Batman and Bruce Wayne, and that is all Kevin Conroy. That's his voice, and it's something that he put his heart and soul into. And I know a lot of fans know how important he is to that character, and that he is attached to that character. My
God,
he might be gone, but he is very much like he will always be associated with it, and in the best way possible, because he really gave that character its voice for a generation of kids that maybe weren't really familiar, that maybe couldn't watch the movies yet. They did, for whatever reason.
Sure.
And for some people that could be their first exposure to Batman, for all we know.
Sure.
So so that I think they all kind of have, which is why it's always been hard for me to be like pick a favorite. I think they all, maybe not George Clooney, but I think they all mostly have like a role, player, have their part in the grand pantheon of like Batman lore. They all kind of like put their stamp on it. But
his is so good, and it's a shame like he didn't get some sort of like voice as like the computer of the fucking the whatever vehicle or something like in one of these bigger major even like in the Flash. Like, what's your problem? Like, I mean, I have a lot of problems with the Flash, but like you can't get Kevin Conroy in there, but you can get Christopher Reeves, and like they totally botched this Michael Keaton thing, unfortunately, in the Flash. Like, just throw Kevin Conroy in as a version of the animated side. I mean, look at what Spider-Verse, like that's that. I mean, you look no further, right? And I think there will be homages to him, and I know they said there's one more appearance in the tank after this Suicide
Oh,
Squad game.
that he completed or before he died.
Yeah, whatever. But I also know, like, someone was talking somewhere where there's hours and hours of footage of what you said, of like the voice actors like talking, like doing their roles or whatever. Like, I'm sure,
Yeah.
I hope we get a HBO Max or a Max, whatever they call it today, documentary series about the animated series, but mainly about Kevin Conroy, because, well, people don't really know. I mean, I didn't know that about him being lonely and being in the closet. Like, that's fascinating. I mean, that informs,
Yeah.
you could hear that in his voice now,
Yeah, apparently he at one point wrote a comic book story about an actor who is struggling with that. And they said, like, if you could, they said it's really well written, and that's kind of like, and that's what they think he was able to tap into, whatever he needed to tap into for playing Batman. I bet they said that he really did treat it more than just a voiceover role, and he
Mhm.
also loved the fans. Like, he really, really loved the fans.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and they loved him clearly.
Yeah, totally.
Like, he definitely is a huge part of pop culture in a really big way. And
Mhm.
yeah, and like you said, that moment at the cemetery, that was one thing. I mean, the movie's great, but that stood out to me as, like, I was like, oh, I could see dude in the booth just doing some real acting and not just like speaking into, like,
Yeah.
his microphone or whatever. Like, he was probably like got really into that, um, and you could tell in the delivery. So yeah, really, really terrific actor that got like a I think some people would view this part as like, oh, you don't get to see his face, you only hear his voice, but like his voice transcends that
Mhm.
and doesn't really matter. Um, I think for a lot of people, they would even rank him higher than many of the live action Batman. So I think that's a testament to how
Yeah.
good he is.
I've seen that. I've also seen Mark Hamill say that he's not doing the Joker again, because
Uh,
Kevin Conroy is
yeah,
gone. So I mean, I guess
on
we'll see, but
yeah.
sure, Mark Hamill doesn't need the money,
No,
you
no,
know.
I think he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
He's doing okay. Before we wrap these things up, we always like to give the movies a score at the end. However you want to score it, whether it's your letterbox up to 5 stars, out of 1 to 10, letter grade, whatever you want to give it. What do you give Batman Mask of the Phantasm? And if you have any final thoughts, you share with me.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give this a 5. I think it's not only a great film, right? But it's for everyone, but it's an adult film, and it tackles issues that I think, we talk about mental health and whatever, and violence. I mean, all these things turn on any channel, right? You go to social media, like, whatever. This film, like, deals with those things in such a head on, not shy away from the pain of loss, the pain of mental unwellness, and
Yeah.
the pain of there being no good choices, because a choice, you lose out on something else, right? And I think it just it not only does it do a fantastic job of all that, the acting is amazing. There is something about this movie that I can't put my finger on. It's the way it sounds, the way it looks, the way it smells. I know that doesn't make sense, but
No, I get you.
I think I feel like if you could see it at a midnight screening on a Friday or Saturday night, Thursday night, whatever, in your city, just whatever. I know a lot of people don't have that in an old theater. It will blow your mind. It will blow your mind like Batman '89 did. You will realize, like, this is spooky. This is scary. This feels kind of personal, and it's also just like a fun ride. It is bleak. It is dark, but you get Kevin Conroy, you get Mark Hamill as the Joker. I'm again, we need Andrea Beaumont, and the Phantasm to come into the real world now. And I would
Yep.
just encourage everybody to just to go buy it on, however you buy it. If you buy physical media, great; digital, great; whatever. But see this thing, appreciate this thing for what it was. Watch it really late at night. I think you'll
Yeah.
really dig it. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5.
I'm gonna give it a 5 as well. I like I said, I hadn't watched it in years. I forgot how good it was, and it holds up really well. It is probably one of the best Batman projects out there. I love that it deals with like multiple themes. It is adult, and but it is able to toe a line where it's adult, but kids can appreciate it for what it is too. I I think it's interesting that when they were promoting it, they were promoting it exclusively on the kids network, right? They were probably only really promoting it during Batman animated series for children, and in reality, if they would have played this more to adults at the time, it might have done a little better at the box office too, I think. And I don't know, it feels so much more than an animated film. It feels much more cinematic than it being an animated film. It's really well written, and like we said, the voice acting is top notch as well. I also agree. Justice for Adrian Beaumont, Phantasm. I would love to see more of.
Dude, yeah.
I would love to see that in live action form. And yeah, if you get your hands on it, get the 4K. But if you are creative with like tinkering with cover art, try to get the original cover art on your 4K.
Yeah.
Not saying this isn't fine. I get it. I think so. This looks like this is being sold to like a child, to children.
Yeah.
Like this looks more like like, hey, my kid should pick this up.
Yeah, I don't know who's in charge over there.
Yeah, that original cover art is iconic. So yeah, if you get that, try to make shift your own little cover art with the original art for it.
Or like just go look up the original poster. I mean, that thing
it looks great.
Oh man. Incredible.
It's so I mean, and honestly, the Batman films, Batman comic books have all been really good at having these key pieces of art that just stand out. I mean, we talked about it with 89. I even think Batman Returns had it too. They had the one Batman logo that had like all the snow around it. That was like their first little teaser poster. And then honestly, the 3-image poster with Batman, Catwoman, and Penguin, that's all like kind of dark, is really cool.
Yeah.
It was just until people saw it that they were like, ooh, like, what was that?
Yeah, I like the Batman Returns poster because you're right. It's the snowy Batman logo, and underneath it, I think it just says Returns.
Yeah,
the original.
And it's great. It's like a good teaser poster. But yeah, I don't know. Such a great movie, and I'm glad you picked it. Another solid choice on your part.
Thank you. Yeah.
Not Vanilla Sky, guys. One day.
we will get to it, but I think we should do something like out of the ordinary, like extraordinary for it, like something weird. We should do like some weird kind of promo or something where
that would be fun.
Yeah, like I'll shoot some sort of reel. You'll shoot some sort of reel, and then we'll sort of, I don't know, like that's like using the music or something or whatever. Yeah,
we should talk about it because now that now this is going to be in the YouTube space, we can probably utilize that a lot more. So we should talk about how we promote that. Totally, I will probably talk your ear off about Vanilla Sky.
Dude, same here. I saw that thing when it came out. I saw that thing 4 times in the theater. So that's what you're dealing with.
So good.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, guys, until next time, this is Gaius, and thank you again, Dustin, for joining me on Back to the Box Office Presents Deep Dives. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods. But we like to shout out the Playlist Studio app because they are a podcast network, and you can get their app in the iOS store or in the Google Play Store if you have one of those pesky Droid Samsung phones with the green bubble text.
No.
And then you will also be able to see this episode up on YouTube. We're going to be gradually building up that channel throughout the year as another way for you guys to discover us. As always, thanks for listening. Again, Dustin, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure.
Can't wait to have you back. And until next time, guys, peace.